Thank you for joining us for this very special investiture ceremony being conducted to honour those recognised in the Australian Honours System. I trust you all enjoy this afternoon's investiture and being part of such a wonderful occasion. May I invite those of you who are able to do so to please stand for the arrival of His Excellency the Honourable Chris Dawson, APM, Governor of Western Australia, and Mrs Darrylyn Dawson. Thank you. Please be seated. A very warm welcome to all of you in the Government House Ballroom or joining us via our live stream today. I would like to invite a very special friend of everyone here at Government House, Emeritus Professor Colleen Hayward AM, to present the Welcome to Country.
Governor, Mrs Dawson, former Governor Michael, political leaders, honours recipients, families, friends, distinguished guests all. Today, as we celebrate the investiture of key community leaders in Western Australia, it is my pleasure to help us also recognise and celebrate the place of Aboriginal Western Australians and the relationship we all have to this wonderful state of ours. In doing so, I acknowledge that we are meeting on land that is part of the traditional country of the people of the Noongar Nation, and I pay my respects to elders past and present. I welcome you to Noongar country, and I especially note that the Noongar clan for the metropolitan area is the Whadjuk clan. Welcomes to country help us pay respect to people and to place, as well as to our collective past. They join us in common purpose and set the context of us being here together. In Noongar country, we have 6 seasons rather than 4, and the name for this season is Jilba. It is marked by the burst of colour in our native plants, most notably the creams and yellows of the acacia and the soft pinks of the Geraldton wax. On a day that enjoyed stormy weather this morning, you might also like to know that the early flowering of the wattles means we're likely to be in for a long hot summer, known to us as Camberang and Birak. This ceremony, like all investiture ceremonies, is special. All recipients will receive their Order of Australia medals. This signifies them as the bedrock of our society because it means they have worked tirelessly building the communities we enjoy and from which we all benefit. In short, the recipients are indeed special. In the language of my forebears, Kaya, Jorbani Nunuk Jinin Jini Nala Kada Jini Nunga Mortbridia Kayan Kadak Nijabuja. Translated, that means, I am happy to see you. I acknowledge people, family, and the elders of the past and the present of this land. All the people we honour today have done extraordinary things, selflessly and mostly over many years. On their behalf, I also thank the families and friends who have supported them through their respective journeys to this recognition. On a day such as this, I urge us all to continue to actively address the challenge of making the modern Western Australia inclusive, sharing and caring for each other. I honour you all and revel in the future we are building together. Kaya, I see you. Wanju, welcome. Be safe. watched over by the nearly 3,000 ancestral generations of people who precede us, and most especially enjoy the proceedings and the recognition today's recipients so richly deserve. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Colleen, for such a beautiful welcome. Again, if you are able to do so, I invite you to please stand for the Australian National Anthem led by Miss Ashlyn Timms.
Australians, all let us rejoice, for we are one and free. We've golden soil and wealth for toil. Our home is girt by sea. Our land abounds in nature's gifts of beauty rich and rare. In history's page, let every stage advance Australia fair. In joyful strains, then let us sing, advance Australia fair.
Please be seated. Many thanks, Ashlyn, for so beautifully filling the ballroom with such a wonderful rendition of the National Anthem. It is now my pleasure to invite His Excellency, the Honourable Chris Dawson, APM, Governor of Western Australia, to make his address.
Well, good afternoon and welcome to Government House. I'd firstly like to acknowledge the Wadjuk people of the Noongar Nation and pay my respects to their elders past and present. It's great to see you all here, and thank you, Colleen, for that wonderful welcome to country, and Ashlyn for that wonderful singing of our national anthem. My wife Darren and I are really pleased that you can all be with us here at this historic place at the Government House Ballroom for the investiture of the Queen's Birthday for 2022 honours. And we also have several recipients from previous honour lists receiving their awards here today as well. It's a warm welcome again to our award recipients, their guests, family, loved ones and supporters who've travelled to be here. I do also extend a big hello to those that are watching on the live stream. Can I start by congratulating the 39 Australians that we're about to recognise for your outstanding service to Australia, to our community, across such a diverse range of fields and endeavours. Today is about you, so please relax, take pride and enjoy this special occasion surrounded by your family and friends who are your important support network. And we would like to join and thank you in supporting you along the way. Today's the first investiture ceremony since I've taken up this office as Governor of Western Australia. And so while in the past I've been to many of these as an official guest and as a recipient, it's really humbling and honouring for me to be able to be here officiating. The conferral of Australian honours and awards at these ceremonies is a really important part of the Governor's role, and it's one that I will always look forward to. It's a chance to stop, to reflect on all the good work that's being carried out in our community. It's really an opportunity for us all to be inspired, and I'm sure you will be as you hear the citations that are read out. Above all, it's a chance to celebrate and thank people here who have made a difference, who help others and achieve their very best. Over the past 2.5 years, it's been a very challenging time for all of Western Australia with the COVID-19 pandemic and the challenges that has created for all of us. What is uplifting, though, is that people who are receiving their awards today, despite the difficult times we've been in, have gone on to achieve and contribute despite the hardships that we've all been facing. And that speaks a lot to the idea of duty, something which I hold very close. Our recipients today have not only recognised their duty, but they've gone above and beyond in these requirements. It's reflected in your hard work, in striving for excellence, as well as your dedication, your generosity of spirit, your courage, your selflessness, and I note that for many of you, you do this as volunteers. It's resulted in positive impacts for our community and for our collective well-being. It makes our state a better place to live. And I will show my bias here. It is the best place to live, but you're making it even better. As I mentioned earlier, the breadth of achievement here is superb. And you'll note as you listen to these citations, it spans across community and voluntary service, across the arts, education, health, emergency response, the judiciary, government service at all levels, animal welfare, the environment, aviation, agriculture, service to our Indigenous communities, our veterans, and to our children and our young people. So to all of the recipients, on behalf of all Australians, I thank you, we thank you. It enriches our lives and it is a real privilege to invest you with your awards today. I hope you do wear your insignia with pride, and it may start a conversation about how others can also be recognised. So in that, note that you are here today because someone took the time to actually nominate those who are receiving their awards. So I do urge all of you to think of someone that you know is achieving in our community and are deserving of recognition. Please refer to your booklets. You'll see that there's a hyperlink notation in there where you can actually nominate someone to receive an Australian award. In closing, I'd like to thank my staff from Government House and those contractors that are here to make this event smooth, and I'm sure it is going to be that. Darren and I look forward to catching up with you in the supper room downstairs after the awards have been presented, and in welcoming you all from every part of our community through these doors. So thank you, and congratulations to all of the award recipients.
Thank you so very much, Governor. I now invite you to present our very worthy recipients with their awards. Governor, the Governor-General has approved the following awards. Awarded the Medal of the Order of Australia in the General Division, Associate Professor David John Allen, OAM, for service to the international community of Myanmar. Professor Allen is the founder and Executive Director of Spectrum Sustainable Development Knowledge Network. An expert in sustainability strategy, he has been working for 17 years helping guide government, private sector and communities towards common goals of more collective sustainable development, accessible energy and environmental management. At the foundation of his work is the empowerment of local people and strengthening resource practices, rights and economic justice for all. His key focus has been policy reform for natural resource revenue and public financial management fields. Associate Professor Allen. Ms. Annette Barton, OAM, for service to occupational therapy. Ms. Barton began her OT career in 1979 and over 4 decades has held leadership roles across major hospitals and associations. Head of Department at Sir Charles Gardner and Osborne Park Hospitals, she's led emergency care teams, established essential rehabilitation units across Perth, and is the first to put her hand up to volunteer on industry and representative projects. She's a chief investigator on multiple research grants and is sought after for the insight and expertise she brings to the industry. Her excellence has been well recognised as the recipient of multiple awards. Ms. Barton. Ms. Gillian Dorothy Barton, OAM, for service to the welfare of equine animals. Ms. Barton's quest has been a global one, connecting the history of 2 nations, Australia and Egypt. For over 8 years, she has been co-founder and CEO of Egypt Equine Aid, an organisation helping to care for the horses and donkeys of the Cairo and Pyramids area, some of which were descendants of the nearly 10,000 Australian war horses left behind after World War I. By selling the family home, Jill established and still runs a very busy equine teaching hospital providing free veterinary care. It is widely regarded as the best vet training hospital in Giza. Ms Barton. Mrs Asha Bart, OAM, for service to the Indigenous community of Western Australia. Mrs Bart has led the Southern Aboriginal Corporation since 2013, working with the Noongar community to collectively plan and implement progressive and effective support programs that are being rolled out across WA. Migrating to WA from India nearly 2 decades ago, she quickly became a vocal advocate for marginalised communities, not only in her work but also as a volunteer. Chair of Albany's Family and Domestic Violence Action Group and WA volunteer team leader for national women's charity Share the Dignity, she believes passionately in the right for all to feel safe, equal and respected. Mrs Bart. Mrs Jean Mary Bruce, OAM, for service to the community through charitable organisations. When it comes to volunteering, Mrs Bruce is a true champion. She currently gives her time to 8 community organisations. The 2021 City of Coburn's Community Senior Citizen of the Year, she spends her days caring for those who need it most, whether it's working to support the homeless, providing companionship to cancer patients, helping native wildlife and animal rescue groups, or collecting and delivering food and supplies to families in need. The locals lovingly refer to her as Jeanie for her tireless and selfless work. Mrs Bruce. Miss Helen Olga Bryant, OAM, for service to the Jewish community of Western Australia. Miss Bryant has dedicated a lifetime to nurturing and educating our children and youth. She has worked as a teacher and team leader for Temple David Progressive Synagogue for nearly 50 years, served as Temple David President twice, and represented WA on the National Council of Jewish Women Education Boards. She is a life member of Temple David and was recognised by the Union of Progressive Judaism with a Vatic Award honouring her continued commitment beyond 5 years of being a president of a member community. Ms Bryant. Dr Betsy Buchanan, OAM, for service to the community through social welfare organisations. For well over 40 years, Dr Buchanan has volunteered her time to helping WA's Indigenous community. Appointed an honorary Noongar for the work she's done as an advisor and mentor, she has worked tirelessly to help people in crisis, assisting with free legal and welfare advice and support. After leaving a career in the Crown Solicitor's Office in 1971 to volunteer as a legal and social advocate, she established WA's first community law centre and still works today across many community organisations. She is also a WA Women's Hall of Fame inductee. Dr Buchanan. Mr Kent Edgerton Warburton, OAM, for service to the agricultural technology industry. Widely regarded as a pioneer of the ag tech industry, Mr Edgerton Warburton is credited for developing software over 40 years ago that would go on to revolutionise WA and Australia's agricultural industry. A self-taught coder, his computer program is still used industry-wide today, helping farmers with their accounting, budgeting and business management needs. Still developing his tech skills, he is busy volunteering his time to build a website for his local bowls club, as well as his long-time commitment as a member of Apex and Rotary. Mr Edgerton Warburton. Ms Sharon Paula Feckerty, OAM, for service to dirt track karting. Ms Feckerty is highly regarded in the Western Australian dirt kart racing community. For nearly 3.5 decades, she has done it all, volunteering at every turn, whether that be building clubs from scratch, executive committee positions, officiating in the tower, running the office, managing the books, assessing the risks, or keeping people safe as the first aid officer. All done whilst also racing. She has been a motorsport steward for a quarter of a century, and in that time has broken new ground as the first female steward at both national and state titles, a trailblazer in the sport, Ms Feckerty. Mr Barry Finch, OAM, for service to at-risk youth and to education. Mr Finch has worked with disengaged and disadvantaged youth in the Kimberley and metropolitan regions for over 30 years. For the last 21 years, 12 of those as principal, he and his team at Port School in Hamilton Hill have offered care to socially disadvantaged and at-risk youth, working tirelessly to help young people re-engage in their education. He provides a safe environment where students feel they belong, offering support and life skills to transition into the community as contributing young adults. He is an inspiring leader and mentor who is greatly respected in the community. Mr Finch. Mr Michael James Foley, OAM, for service to local government. Mr Foley is a stalwart of local government in Western Australia. 14 years as the CEO of the City of Swan, he revitalised the state's largest metropolitan local government area, leading it through a period of exponential growth and development. As a leader, he was greatly admired for his honesty, integrity and hard work. He joined the city as a construction engineer in 1981, working his way to the top job 25 years later. He is a former state president of the Institute of Public Works Engineering Australasia and a member of multiple local government committees and advisory groups. Mr Foley. Mr Daniel James Ford, OAM, for service to the Indigenous community of Western Australia. A proud Noongar man, Mr Ford strives to create a foundation of success and achievement for Aboriginal people. Co-founder of the Noongar Chamber of Commerce, he draws on 30 years of public service expertise to support opportunities for Aboriginal people to develop their own businesses and enterprises. For decades, he has immersed himself in committees and advisory groups supporting and furthering WA's First Nations people. He is the current chair of Wandjining Aboriginal Corporation and board member of the Clontarf Foundation. Community is at the forefront of everything he does and all that he works to achieve. Mr Ford. Mrs Valerie French, OAM, for service to the judiciary and to the law. Mrs French forged a groundbreaking path in Australia's legal profession, both personally and in helping to transform Australian legal policy. She made history as the first woman to practice as a barrister in Western Australia, went on to serve as a magistrate and mining warden, a judge of the District Court, president of the Children's Court of WA, and full-time chair of the state's parole board. She is an icon to many women entering the legal profession and continues to give her time as a member of the board of Law Access, coordinating pro bono legal assistance and advice. Mrs French. Ms Celia Mary Gray, OAM, for service to conservation and the environment. In particular, her contribution to the Urban Bushland Council WA Incorporated, the Wildflower Society of WA, and her dedication in protecting our natural landscapes. Ms Gray has been involved in the Urban Bushland Council since it began 29 years ago, serving as either President Chair or Vice President Chair for 25 of those years. She has been an active member of the Wildflower Society for over 4 decades and has been described as a tenacious advocate for the protection of our bushlands and wetlands. Ms Gray. Mrs Yvonne Agnes McCarrow Jennings, OAM, for service to the community of the Swan Hill region of Victoria. Mrs Jennings is a leader, mentor and friend to many in the Swan Hill region, the state of Victoria and nationally, dedicating her life to sustainable growth and development in regional communities. She is a former local government councillor, deputy mayor, national ambassador for women in local government and active member of multiple boards and organisations. Co-founder of the Loddon Murray Community Leadership Program and a Rotarian, she's enabled programs for men, women, youth and women with disabilities. A past Victorian Rural Woman of the Year, an awardee and ambassador on the Victorian Honour Roll. Mrs Jennings. Major Mac Jensen, OAM, RFD retired for service to the Indigenous community of Western Australia. Major Jensen has lived a life of service to remote Indigenous people, both military and civil. As an Army officer, he recruited, trained and led remote Indigenous soldiers for the Australian Army in the Kimberley and Northern Australia for over 15 years, including operational border protection tasks. He remains a strong advocate for remote Indigenous ex-servicemen. For the past 20 years, he's continued training and capacity building work in remote communities through Indigenous land management and ranger programs, remote Indigenous training and employment initiatives. He is a leader, trainer, mentor and educator of great standing, Major Jensen. Mr Glenn Kelly, OAM, for service to the Indigenous community of Western Australia. A proud Noongar man from the lower southwest, Mr Kelly has dedicated over 25 years as an advocate of Indigenous interests. As CEO of the Southwest Aboriginal Land and Sea Council, he was the chief negotiator for Noongar people of the historic Southwest Native Title Settlement, the largest of its type in Australia. Now a member of the National Native Title Council, formerly a Director of Reconciliation Australia, and 2019 Western Australian of the Year Aboriginal Award recipient, he is highly respected for his knowledge, integrity and efforts in advancing reconciliation across Australia. Mr Kelly. Mr David Anthony Lavelle, OAM, for service to the community of Mandarin, where Mr Lavelle served as a councillor for 16 years, a term as Shire President, and on various residents, arts and development groups and panels, including as a member of the Eastern Metropolitan Regional Council. As a civil structural engineer, he has provided pro bono services to community groups and volunteer fire brigades. He served as an Australian volunteer abroad in the 80s, joined registered engineers for disaster relief in the 90s, deployed overseas many times on dangerous global humanitarian missions. For this, he was awarded the Engineering Heroes Award by Engineers Australia, as well as the Humanitarian Overseas Service Medal. Mr Lavelle. Mr Peter Hugh Lee, OAM, for service to community housing initiatives and to architecture. With a stellar career in architecture and design and his role as principal and board member of Hassel, Mr Lee has helped shape Perth's structural soul for many decades. However, it's his community focus that we also celebrate today. As long-time chair of the Development Committee for Foundation Housing, he has been instrumental in developing a portfolio of housing for WA's most disadvantaged. The not-for-profit is more than just bricks and mortar. It is about empowering its tenants towards a better life. His community work also extends across a wide range of other community panels and organisations. Mr Lee. Mr Fred John Lynch, OAM, for service to veterans and to the community. For 15 years, Mr Lynch was a member of the Australian Defence Force, serving in both the Malayan Emergency and the Korean confrontation in the 50s and 60s. Determined to pay respects to those who fought and ensure that we always remember those who did not return, he has been actively involved as a member of the National Malaya Borneo Veterans Association Australia. His work for veterans has traversed many decades, and he has been heavily involved in a number of ex-service organisations, working to support veterans and preserve WA's military history. Mr Lynch. Mr Barrymore Hardy Markham, OAM, for service to the community and to aviation. Mr Markham is well known in the Western Australian aviation industry and also in the international de Havilland world. A member of the Royal Aero Club of WA, he holds 10 Federation Aeronautique world records and 10 Australian records, all set in his World War II Tiger Moths. These were established in his 1998 flight from Perth to the UK, the first of its kind, along the way raising valuable funds for the Royal Flying Doctor Service. He currently volunteers at the Australian Red Cross Lifeblood and previously volunteered and fundraised at the RFDS and Rotary International. Mr Markham. Ms Holly Ann Martin, OAM, for service to child safety. For the last 35 years, Mrs. Martin has dedicated her energy and efforts to keeping our children safe. Founder and Managing Director of Safe for Kids, a company dedicated to protecting children from child abuse, she has built on decades of experience as a special needs education assistant to create programs and tools to help children of all ages learn protective behaviours. She is an author of handbooks and teaching materials used by educators and parents. Previously described her proudest moment as the day she was inducted into the WA Women's Hall of Fame, but I think today may just top that. Miss Martin. Mr. Murray Stephen McHenry, OAM, for service to the hospitality industry and to sport. Mr. McHenry is a successful hotelier, sports administrator, athlete and coach. Representing WA in rowing and as a coach at the World Championships, he went on to launch successful businesses in hospitality and winemaking, as well as make his mark in the world of football administration with a lifetime of service at all levels. Chair and Deputy Chair of the WA Football Commission over 10 years, he was also Deputy Chair, Director and ultimately Chairman at the West Coast Eagles. His outstanding contribution has previously been recognised as the winner of the 2021 West Australian of the Year Sport Award, Mr. McHenry. The Honourable Robin Mary McSweeney OAM for service to the people and Parliament of Western Australia. Member of the Legislative Council for the South West region for 16 years, the Honourable Mrs McSweeney was Shadow Minister from 2001 to 2008, then Minister for Child Protection and Community Services, Seniors, Women and Youth until 2013. She chaired the Legislation and Rural Education Committees until retiring in 2017. Before her parliamentary career, she served on the State Boards for Women, Juvenile Justice and Family and Children's Advisory Board, has held roles in the WA Liberal Party, worked as a local government councillor, volunteered for various organisations and has been a Justice of the Peace for 30 years. The Honourable Mrs McSweeney. Dr. Sally Murphy OAM for service to children's literature and to education. Dr. Murphy is a successful children's author and poet, having written more than 50 books over the past 26 years. She is also a literacy education specialist who is teaching and guiding the next generation of educators as a lecturer at Curtin University. A multi-award winner, her life goal is to write for, read with and speak to as many people as possible and spread the love of reading to children and adults alike. And I think you'd agree she is well on her way to achieving this. Dr. Murphy. Mr. Kevin Andrew O'Keefe, OAM, for service to Indigenous education. Mr. O'Keefe is a proud Noongar man with a deep passion for Indigenous education. He commenced as a teacher with the WA Education Department in 1971 and has held several leadership positions, including as Executive Director and Executive Principal of Nunadura Land School, a multi-campus remote community school in the Western Desert. In 2017, he became Principal Advisor to support the Education Department's progress in Aboriginal education. He is also an accomplished researcher, having led a national project on Indigenous education while at ECU. Mr. O'Keefe. Miss Marilyn Phillips, OAM, for service to choral music. In her international career as a pianist and conductor, Miss Phillips has performed in many of the world's most famous concert halls. In Australia, she has taught and mentored hundreds of young musicians and supervised choral and vocal workshops around the country. She was Head of Music with West Australian Opera, Director of the Western Australian Symphony Orchestra Chorus, and was awarded the Prime Minister's Centenary Medal for services to Australian opera. She currently teaches at the West Australian Academy of Performing Arts and since 2019 has been President of the Royal Schools Music Club. Ms. Phillips. Ms. Patricia Rodriguez, OAM, for service to secondary education. For 46 years, Ms. Rodriguez has dedicated her career to educating Western Australians. Starting out as a teacher in 1976, she's risen through the ranks to hold a number of significant leadership and principal positions at high schools across Perth, initiating programs and ideas to develop better pathways for her students. Her commitment to education has also continued away from the classroom, with 27 years volunteering her time and expertise on advisory committee associations, education boards and institutes. She continues her unwavering service to secondary education, as the current principal of Court Grammar School in Mundijong. Ms. Rodriguez. Mrs. Moya Sharp, OAM, for service to community history. For nearly 3 decades, Mrs. Sharp has been researching family stories and the rich history of the goldfields. Her historical writing began in 1996, and she is the co-founder of the free-of-charge Outback History blog and website, creating a remarkable record of the region's history. The site includes thousands of priceless photographs and documents relating to the people, towns and places of the goldfields. In 2014, she founded the Western Australian Virtual Miners Memorial, dedicated to the memory of miners who have died in accidents or from mining-related diseases. Mrs. Sharp. Mrs. Dorothy June Smith, OAM, for service to the community through philanthropic roles. Giving is at the heart and soul of Mrs. Smith. She is the founder, financial supporter and volunteer at Dot's Place, a network of cancer support and therapy centres in Bunbury and Mandurah that operate as part of Cancer Council WA. She established a private ancillary fund with financial assistance from her late husband and parents and purchased properties to house holistic support services for people affected by cancer close to where they live. She is a staunch supporter of the West Australian Ballet, a long-term supporter of Ronald McDonald House and other worthy causes. Mrs. Smith. Dr. Jennifer Jane Stedmon, OAM, for service to medicine in the field of anaesthesia. Dr. Stedman's career has been anything but ordinary, rising to the top of her profession as Director of Anaesthesia in various hospitals in Australia, and her global humanitarian work has also been exemplary. She was awarded the Australian and New Zealand College of Anaesthetists Council Citation in recognise of her work for the college, and 20 years of volunteering with the Red Cross in countries gripped by health crises and natural disasters. She has served as chair of both the college's WA Regional Committee and the WA branch of International Red Cross Humanitarian Law Committee. Dr. Stedman. Mr. Ian Bagzar Stiles, OAM, for service to the community of Jurien Bay. Mr. Stiles was selected for the Special Air Service at age 18 and on his second tour of Vietnam at 22 became a patrol sergeant. As a volunteer St John's ambulance officer, he established the Coastal District's SES unit after learning there was no road rescue unit on the Brand Highway. He worked on the Jurien Bay Marine Park Committee to establish the park, was founding president of the Men's Shed, was with the Volunteer Marine Rescue and part of the team that worked on the syllabus for Train the Trainer VMR Coxswain's courses. He was awarded the Volunteer Marine Rescue WA Commanders Award in 2017. Mr. Stiles. Mr. Russell James Tomter, OAM, for service to the visual arts, particularly to photography. Internationally acclaimed celebrity and fashion photographer, Mr. Tomter has forged a most impressive path from humble beginnings sweeping the floors of darkrooms to becoming one of the world's most sought-after photographers. His work appears in some of the world's most prestigious galleries and in published art books. A photographer and director, he has also worked on Australian and international projects, including the Clinton Global Initiative and the socially conscious Nomad Two Worlds, a collaborative art project with Indigenous communities that began in WA and operates worldwide. Mr. Tomter. Dr. Michelle Eva Toner, OAM, for service to community health, particularly in recognition of her significant contribution to people with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. Dr. Toner has been supporting people with ADHD and their families since 1995 and is passionate about empowering all ages to live better lives. She works hard to educate others through coaching and mentoring. She's been a strong supporter of ADHD Western Australia since 1993 and served as president of the Board of Management over 12 years. She is also the co-author of an ADHD go-to guide for parents and teachers. Dr. Toner. The late Ms. Peter Christine Townsing, OAM, for service to emergency response organisations. Volunteers are the heart and soul of regional communities, and when it came to keeping her area safe, the late Miss Townsend was a superstar. She was a driving force in initiatives across many communities, but it was her dedication to the Bailing Up Bushfire Brigade that we honour today. She volunteered across many key roles, was a fierce advocate for mitigation and bushfire management, volunteered to help rebuild surrounding regions impacted by fire, and active in educating the community. Accepting this wonderful honour on her behalf today is Miss Townsend's husband, Mr John Pritchard. Mrs Judith Marion Tuckey, OAM, for service to the community of Mandurah. And where would Mandurah be without Mrs Tuckey? She was the 2019 City of Mandurah Local Legend, has received a Volunteer Service Award for over 43 years of service to the Citizens Advice Bureau and is a life member. She is founding member and current patron of Coolabah Care, formerly the Mandurah Retirement Village, has been involved in establishing many organisations, including founder of the Mandurah Kindergarten, the Mandurah branch of the Arthritis Foundation of WA, foundation member and current patron of the Mandurah Country Club, and life member of the Bridge Club. Mrs Tuckey. Ms Dot West, OAM, for services to First Nations Media and Communications. Ms West is Director of Galari Media in Broome and over 30 years has led a surge in Indigenous media growth, opportunities and projects across the Kimberley and around Australia. She is an exceptional mentor and educator. A non-executive director of SBS, Director of Ramu Productions, she's also been a Screen West board member and chair of First Nations Media Australia. She is a multi-award-winning writer and producer, including a Logie and Augie, a WA Screen Award for contribution to the WA screen industry, and recipient of First Nations Media Lifetime Achievement Award. Ms West. Mr Brian John Williams, OAM, for service to emergency response organisations. For over 5 decades, Mr Williams has worked to protect his community as a leader, mentor and officer in the New South Wales Rural Fire Service. He has served at multiple brigades across the state, taken on a variety of key roles including President, Vice President, Operations and Incident Officer and Captain. He was a foundation member of the New South Wales Volunteer Firefighters Association, and when not managing or leading a brigade, could be found on the front line protecting homes and properties. He was awarded the 50-year Service Medal in 2018. Mr Williams. Awarded the medal in the honorary division, Ms Paula Denise Wagg, OAM, for services to horse racing. Miss Wagg has been an iconic name in Western Australian racing for over 40 years and is a trailblazer in the sport. She was the first female to become a fully fledged licensed jockey when starting her career in 1979, forging a successful riding career for 10 years before becoming a trainer in 1991, all the while cutting new paths for women right across the sport. She won acclaim as a trainer at elite level with a win in the 1998 Group 1 WA Derby, and was inducted into Western Australia's Women's Hall of Fame in 2017. Ms Wagg. Governor, that concludes the presentation of recipient awards. I now invite all of you, because you've been so patient, really ready to get clapping. Join me in congratulating Thank you all so much. Thank you so much, Governor, and congratulations once again to all our recipients. That now concludes the formal part of today's special event. In just a moment, I will invite you to join us for refreshments and a chance to celebrate further with recipients and guests in the supper room, which is below us, which can be accessed by stairs or a lift through the arches at the rear. I now invite you to please stand as the Governor and Mrs Dawson depart the ballroom. It's now my pleasure to next invite our official guests